Hello students, Mrs. Moon here, and today we're going to do a quick tutorial on calculating the area of a triangle. So this is a formula that you should already be familiar with if you are in 7th grade math. And the area of a triangle is A equals 1/2 times the base times the height. So sometimes when we think of formulas, we think, wow, that's really a lot to memorize. It's really helpful if you understand why the formula is what it is. So let's talk a little bit about why. I know you've seen this before, but let me remind you why the formula is 1/2 times the base times the height. Well, what is a triangle? A triangle is half of a parallelogram. So if you take a parallelogram like I've drawn here, and you draw a diagonal down that parallelogram, you can see that it divides the parallelogram into two equal triangles. So, really, a triangle is half of a parallelogram. Well, the formula for finding area of any parallelogram is the base times the height. B base times H height. So, since a triangle is half of a parallelogram, then our formula is half of the base times the height. I also want to remind you what we're finding when we're calculating area. Area calculates the square units inside a figure. So we oftentimes talk about area versus perimeter. Remember, perimeter is the measure of the distance around a figure, whereas area is calculating the amount of space inside of that figure. So it is always given our answer in square units because we're talking about the space inside of the figure. I have 5 examples that I'm going to talk you through today that will hopefully help you to be successful with your assignment. So looking at the first example, here is a triangle. We will begin with our formula. Area equals 1/2 times the base times the height. Here we see the base and the height are given, but sometimes it looks like the triangle's kind of rotated. I don't see a base on the bottom. It looks like my base is here, and then this would be my height. Or you could think about this being the base and this being the height. Regardless, you're going to multiply 1/2 times 3 times 6. The big thing to notice here is that your base and height are what we call perpendicular to each other. They meet at a right angle. So 1/2 times 3 times 6, I just multiplied 3 times 6 first and got 18. And then half of 18 is 9 inches squared. Looking at the second example, we see that both the base and the height are 5. This time, it does not tell me that this is a right angle, but we do know that it has to be because this particular triangle has to be isosceles, which means that this has to be a right angle. So if I multiply 1/2 times the base times the height, base and height multiply to be 25 here, and half of 25 is 12.5 or 12.5 centimeters squared. Looking at the third picture, this time my base goes all the way across here. It is 12 inches, and my height, again, it's perpendicular to the base, and it's shown there with that little square. That means this is a right angle. My height is 3 inches, so I'm going to multiply 1/2 times the base of 12 times the height of 3. I went ahead, since 12 was even, and multiplied by half. Half of 12 is 6, and then 6 times 3 gives me 18 inches squared, or square inches. The fourth example, it's a little bit more complicated. You can see that the base is broken up into 2 pieces, but in order to calculate that base, you're just going to find the sum of 8 plus 5, which is 13 units, or 13 inches. So my base here is 13, my height is 4, so 1/2 times the base times the height. Well, I noticed that the 4 is even, so I went ahead and multiplied 1/2 times 4, and I got 2. So then 2 multiplied by 13 gives me 26 inches squared, or square inches. One more example. We could have something that looks like this. It's a composite figure. This is not a parallelogram, but it is two triangles put into one figure. So, by looking at this, I'm going to break it apart into triangle 1 and triangle 2. So I use my pink marker here to do the math for triangle 1, and I use my blue marker to do the math for triangle 2. And we're going to calculate the area of each, and then find the sum of those two to get the area of the entire figure. So let's look at this triangle here. Our base is 5 and our height is 6. So 1/2 times 5 times 6, I saw 6 is even, so I went ahead and multiplied 1/2 times 6 to get 3, and then multiply that by 5, I get 15 square feet. Looking at this second triangle, my base here is 2, and my height is 6. So 1/2 times 2 times 6, I went ahead and multiplied 2 times 6 to get 12, and then half of 12 is 6. So the area of this triangle is 6 square feet. So then what I have to do is take my two areas and find the sum. 15 plus 6 is 21 square feet. So the area of the entire figure is 21 square feet. So I hope this quick tutorial helps you to be confident when you're calculating the area of a triangle. I hope it reminded you of what that is. It is just half of a parallelogram. And remember that area is always going to be calculated in square units. Good luck!